We are live now.
Jingle.
Welcome to the Character Issues podcast. This is the first episode, and you're with me, the host, Sean. We've got Ian, our social media guru.
Hello.
Dan's on the buttons.
Hello.
And our man for all things Rex Ryan, Diddley.
Oh yeah.
Are we going with Diddley as your name in the show?
Yeah, well, why not? if you call me Matt, it's just weird. So,
I feel uncomfortable calling him Matt.
Yeah, it makes you feel a bit awkward.
Alright, so I thought, first off, as this was Ian's baby, I thought it'd be best to let him describe what the premise of the show is. So over to you, Ian, if you want to start things off.
I guess the format will evolve naturally, but I think the premise is basically the UK and European people who like the NFL but don't necessarily have a huge circle of people to talk about it with. We could be those four not overly intelligent or well-informed people you might hear in a pub talking about football, but talking about the NFL instead. And then for half an hour a week, you get to listen to us.
Sounds pretty good. Yeah, so we've got some segments in mind, but I think the first thing we're going to start off with, and hopefully this will be a weekly occurrence depending on his behaviour, is Johnny Manziel is back in the news. Recently sort of got the starting job for Cleveland again, and decided he was going to celebrate it the only way he knows how, by holding a bottle of champagne in the air and getting himself filmed in a nightclub.
I mean, he's the reason this show is named what it is. Let's be honest. A Character Issues podcast. It's not in his honour and his people of his ilk's honour, isn't it?
Well, we actually describe this podcast as a kind of tongue-in-cheek thing, but he genuinely seemingly has character issues, rather than he smokes a bit of dope. This bloke clearly has some kind of issues going on.
Is that something we should really laugh about then, or is it something deeper than that? Because he did in the off season go into rehab and try and get himself some help. I mean, obviously it didn't work, but but yeah, is there something sort of? Can he be is there any salvation out there for Johnny Manziel, or is this it? Is he just ruining his own career?
Well, this incident in particular doesn't seem so bad. It seems like it's more he's just been photographed in a nightclub. This doesn't seem the worst of his misdemeanors. But I do like the quote from Mike Pettine, the coach, who said, "To whom much is given, much is expected." And I mean, he only gave him a starting job last week, so it seems a bit disingenuous to say that. But what we can look forward to, and Johnny Manziel will be around the NFL for as long as he wants to be, because he's the sort of guy who'll get picked up by if Chad Henne and Matt Moore and people like that can just hang around and find team after team, then someone with Johnny Manziel's name is here to stay, I think. So, we haven't got to worry about him disappearing anytime soon.
Also, while Rex Ryan is a coach in this football league, he will pick up anyone. So,
well, the antithesis of Johnny Manziel, I keep wanting to call him Johnny Football, but I just don't feel like I can, as long as he's more famous for his off-the-field antics than he is for his on-field antics.
Is that legitimately his nickname, Johnny Football?
It is legitimately his nickname from his college football days.
Okay.
But yeah, the antithesis of him is Tim Tebow. And there's clear differences in the fact that Johnny Manziel has gone out there and he shows, in bits and starts, that he can play football at a decent level. So I think you're right. I think there is a future for him in the game, but it's up to him.
Yeah, well, the things with Tim Tebow, he may not be very good at football, but at least he's a decent bloke. So,
American hero.
Well, he is, but anyway, but fundamentally he's not very good at football, so that's a problem.
I think the thing that gets me most about it is that it's not that he was out in a nightclub drinking, because we know who Johnny Football is, but it's the fact that he let himself get filmed and let himself get photographed. That's where it is. That's where the big problem is for him, because I'm sure there are loads of other quarterbacks who go out, but just keep a low profile when you're out.
Well, Johnny Manziel, that's an odd thing he said when asked about it. He said videos can be old. That was like, What an odd thing to say.
So excuses can also be old as well.
Yeah,
Maybe referring to VCRs.
it's like he's
Just
given
going
up on
back to
himself
2020.
there almost, hasn't he? Like,
It's just you can't even be bothered to make up a decent
no,
excuse.
it's like, oh, just get on with it kind of thing.
Okay, well, let's move on to some actual football, shall we? So the first game we're going to cover is from the NFC North. Is Green Bay at the Minnesota Vikings. I think you can tell that I am a Minnesota fan, and we've got Ian with his Green Bay cap on, representing the Wisconsin Cheeseheads. So, Ian, do you want to do a quick recap of the game? Because I was pretty pissed off throughout most of it, so I think you're best placed for it.
From a Packers perspective, we went into it having lost 3 in a row. In the terms of the betting, it was fairly close, and in reality, the game wasn't that close. The Packers were pretty much ahead for them throughout the whole game, I think. I was a bit disappointed with the Vikings. I expected more from them, having we'd heard a lot about they were on a good run, 7-2 going into it. Good defence, but just couldn't get anything going on offense, and that seemed to be because you've got a fairly woeful offensive line, and you don't want to. Teddy Bridgewater got hit far too much.
Sorry, did you see an offensive line out there, Ian? I couldn't make one out.
Well, it helped. The Packers defense actually played fairly well, which was refreshing after a couple of bad weeks, and people like Mike Daniels just further solidifying how much he's going to get paid at the end of the season when he's out of contract. But the Packers, it was something of a return to form, although not a full return to form. But it was fairly encouraging for people of a Wisconsin perspective.
Well, I don't really think you had to. I don't think you played that well. I don't think you had to play that well. I think there's still a lot more to come from the Packers. I think mostly it's the Vikings sort of almost beating themselves. If you've looked at how the Vikings have played this season, really, really strong on defense. Eddie Lacy has been too fat to run for how many weeks now, and so suddenly puts in a 100-yard performance. That's something that the Vikings haven't allowed this season. We've been the least penalised team coming into this game, and just the stupid penalties that they were giving away. Cordero Patterson headbutting a kicker, and I think it maybe even worse. We expect shit from Cordero Patterson, but maybe even worse than that was the Linval Joseph push on Aaron Rodgers, which would have stopped the drop. They would have ended up with a field goal. As it was, they ended the half with another touchdown. It was really game over from there for me. You can barely touch quarterbacks in the league at the best of times. I know it's a cliche thing to say, but a poster boy like Aaron Rodgers, you can't be pushing him sort of 2 seconds after he's thrown the ball. You're always going to get a penalty. Even at home, you can get a penalty against you for that. It's just silly things like that, just sort of stick in my mind from that game. And they've got to eradicate these mistakes from their performances. Because it reminded me so much of how we played in the first game in San Francisco.
How's
Yeah,
Peterson?
Peterson rushed, was it about 35 yards overall? I haven't got the numbers in front of me.
I think he was 40. I think it was like 48 yards or something like that. It just didn't use. He rushed four times in the second half because we was already down by then. And other than the Detroit game, we've very rarely been down by that much. And so I think if you get ahead against the Vikings, you should be fine because we turn to the pass, and we're just not going to beat teams with that. Teddy Bridgewater had an okay game when he found some time to throw the ball, but with an offensive line like that, they can block for the run maybe, but you're not going to stop the D-line getting to a quarterback if they have to throw most times.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think Peterson was sort of symbolic of the ill discipline which characterised the Vikings' performance. Like there was one run where he got stopped and he got up and he got straight in someone's face, and sometimes that can be just competitive, but it just seemed to be a bit of ill discipline through the whole team on Sunday. And as you say, they're not a team built to really throw the ball. I like Kyle Rudolph. I don't know a huge amount about the Vikings receivers, but I like Kyle Rudolph. He played well on Sunday, although
it's his only good game he's had all season.
Yeah, didn't he double his yardage, I think you said at the time, for the whole season in that one game. But the Vikings, I was expecting a little bit more, but from a Packers point of view, we just haven't really got any receivers in form at the moment. And so it's nice that James Jones who wore a hoodie underneath his top, and that got a lot of attention in the Wisconsin media. It's nice that he came back into form.
It wasn't even that cold.
It was open air Minneapolis in November. I mean, it's got to be fair.
What's it going to be like in January in Lambeau?
Well, will Minnesota find out? We'll see. But the Jeff Janis, who is he was a 7th round pick last year. He's a receiver. He's phenomenally quick, phenomenally big and strong, but he's never really got a chance with the Packers. Some fans have called him White Megatron in comparison to Calvin Johnson.
That's not quite catchy, is it?
Slips off the tongue, doesn't it?
White Megatron.
Yeah, so Dan, Calvin Johnson is nicknamed Megatron. He's a Detroit Lions receiver, and he's nicknamed Megatron just because he can jump so high and he's got such a wide wingspan and he can just catch the ball from anywhere, it seems.
Like Megatron can in the Transformers.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds about right. Just for people, I'm not as big of an NFL fan as these guys are, so I'm helping produce this, but I'm learning from what these guys are talking about, and I'm picking things up as a casual fan. I was, for a while, I followed the Cowboys, but as Ian told me the other day, I think, did you say he was back? My QB, Ian?
He's back. He won. He won a game. The Cowboys won a game, and they're not out of the playoffs. The Cowboys are
ridiculous. Back. They're 3-7.
Well, he missed 7 games and he lost all of them.
So as long as he's fit, they'll win.
And they went through how many quarterbacks in that time? I mean, they went through who was the guy who got drafted in the first round? The old guy, Brandon Weeden.
Matt Castle.
Matt Castle. I mean,
I forgot about Matt Castle.
Yeah, he's still around. He's still doing stuff.
An example of what we were talking about earlier, that if you're a quarterback and you've played some games, you'll have a job for a long time, whether you're only good or not, I think. The same way Charlie Whitehurst is still kicking around getting contracts, just because people have heard of him. But just finally on the Packers, Jeff Janis was a real promising sign for us. He had a 70-yard kickoff return on his first ever NFL kickoff, which sort of pleased and angered fans in equal measure on Twitter, because it's like, why have we never given this guy a kickoff before? Why did it take till week 11 for us to give him a go? And he also had a really important pass interference penalty. Well, he won a penalty against one of the cornerbacks in the second half, which sort of showed decent awareness. So he was a bright spot. But in general, as you said, Sean, not a huge return to form for the Packers, but encouraging going into the Bears game on Thursday.
But you've got to be worried about the receiver's hands, right?
James Jones is normally fairly solid. Ty Montgomery's injured at the moment, unknown. Abadaris seems like he'll always be injured. He had a concussion. He had numerous concussion issues in college, and then did his ACL last year in training camp.
It's the sheer amount of drops. I mean, they weren't hard catches. I mean, sort of half the passes seemed to be put down. You know, I wouldn't have been surprised if Aaron Rodgers came away from that game, you know, with 32 out of 34. As it was, he only completed 16 out of 34 passes.
He's not quite.
That wasn't down to him. I mean, that's down to the receivers not being able to catch the ball.
I think it's partly on Rodgers. He's not at his best, but Randall Cobb is getting a lot of criticism from the media, saying he's not at his. No one's at their best. Richard Rodgers, the tight end, is slow, and he only seems to catch it when he's in the end zone, which isn't a bad quality, but you need to get there first, really. You can't really rely on any receiver at the moment, and when that's combined with Eddie Lacy prior to this not playing well either. You know, for a team which is renowned for being good offensively, we've just not been recently, and that really was evident against the Lions the week before last. But, you know, I think we've got the Bears on Thursday, which will be a good test, and then it's not a terrible run-in, so if we can just get to the playoffs, you hope we can play our way into form a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to fancy the Green Bay to top that division there. They've not really got that bad a running compared to the Vikings, who've got some pretty difficult games coming up. So let's move on to Diddley's Delve. So each week we're going to have Diddley look at a player from a particular team. As we're about to look at the Washington-Carolina game, we thought he could look at a player from Carolina's past. So over to you, Diddley.
Well, it's funny you should mention past, because I haven't got much of one. I've only been around.
It must have been quite hard for you.
So it kind of limits you. But you could quite easily go to someone like Jake Delhomme or even Cam Newton, because he's a very good player now, or Steve Smith's obviously a really good wide receiver. But someone I'd quite like to talk about is a fellow called Sam Mills. Now, Sam Mills was a 5-time Pro Bowl selected 5 times for the Pro Bowl, and 4 times before he actually joined. He joined from the Saints. Now, he started every game as franchise's first 3 seasons, and he became a veteran and leader for the young team, very young team growing. And he also gave his 5th Pro Bowl appearance at the age of 37. But it's really about when he retired that he really made his mark at the franchise. He was inducted into the Panthers Hall of Honor, and he became a defensive coaching assistant, and it didn't take long for him to promote to linebackers coach. However, in 2003 he was diagnosed with intestinal cancer, and he was only given a few months to live. But his attitude was, he went under chemotherapy and radiation, but he became an inspirational force for the Panthers in their post-season run. Now, obviously they hadn't had many post-season runs up to that point, but he gave a really impassioned speech before the game against the Dallas Cowboys in the playoffs. And he basically said that when he found out that he had cancer, there were 2 things he could do: quit or keep pounding. He said he was a fighter, and I kept pounding. He said that you're fighters and you keep pounding. So for players to hear that must have been quite an inspirational thing to do and to say. And his plea to keep pounding is actually still embezzled on the back of their shirts to this day. They won that game. Unfortunately, they lost. I say unfortunately. Well, of course, it's unfortunate. Anyone losing to the Patriots is unfortunate. They lost in the Super Bowl to the Patriots 32-29. He's also the oldest player to recover a fumble for a touchdown as well. Just throw that in there. Nice stats, because we all love stats. Unfortunately, he died in 2005, and he was only 45. And Mills's jersey has been retired by the Panthers at the end of the 2005 season. Obviously, a lot of the current players have never met him, but I've heard enough stories about him through assistant coaches and team owner Terry Richardson to understand what he really represented. And Steve Smith, who I mentioned earlier, one of Panthers' great players, I'd say, he did know him, and he had some really nice words to say to him. He basically said Sam was one of those guys. He was special. I'm not exaggerating, making it more than that. He's exuded anything you'd want to be. And what's quite a nice touch is his son, Sam Mills III, as it is now, is an assistant defensive line for the Panthers. And he spoke to the team recently about what it means to keep pounding. And basically all he said to them was this: how I explain it to them is no matter what we do, no matter what part of the game or life we're in, we don't give up. We keep fighting, and see what happens at the end. Now, it's quite a big thing for someone to say that, and he obviously had a huge impact, even though he wasn't there a huge amount of time. So, although you could look at Steve Smith, who's probably someone who's done more for the team, Jake Delhomme was a decent quarterback, and also Cam Newton is obviously a star now. Sam Mills is someone who really has made a huge impact on the Carolina Panthers' history.
That's lovely, Diddley.
Thanks. Next week, next week, who knows? But
I'm pretty sure
a little bit about Sam Mills. He's obviously someone who meant a lot to them, and lives on to this day in their history and what they do. He obviously means a lot to them. So that's why I chose Sam Mills.
Oh, sorry. It's incredible that someone can make that sort of mark by only playing for, what was it, 2 years at the team?
Well, it was there 3 seasons. 3 seasons he started every game, and he actually made the Pro. He did so well for them. He made the Pro Bowl at the age of 37, which is no mean feat, really. So for a linebacker as well. So that's impressive stuff.
Well done. Sam Mills lives on the Character Issues podcast. Well, thanks for that. Thanks for that, Diddley. We'll have another one from you next week. So. Next game we're going to look at is the Washington-Carolina game. Carolina go 10-0 now. So what I want to sort of discuss is, do we believe...
Sorry, he just put a pirate out of his head.
Yeah, I just seem to have found that you can do some...
This is obviously absolutely useless for people who listen to the podcast and don't see it on
No one listens to the podcast.
Let's get back on track.
Thanks for that, Buttons. So let's discuss. Do we think that Carolina or Cam Newton are indeed for real, or have they been lucky with the games they've come up with the right time against the right opponents?
It's a bit harsh to ask, is Cam Newton for real when he threw 5 touchdowns in the last game? It's a bit harsh to say. It's a bit hard to argue against that, isn't it?
He's been very, very good this year, and I looked at some stats today, and one thing that sort of just leapt out at me, and I was really, really, really shocked by this. Only 2 quarterbacks who have played every game this season have passed for less yards than Cam Newton.
Really?
Yeah.
Who are they? Did you go that far? Have I put you on the
spot? No, I did. You can have a guess if you like.
Who have played every game?
Every game, yeah.
And have thrown less yards.
Less yards, yeah.
Has Matt Stafford played every game?
Bridgewater has played every game.
Is he one of them?
He is one of them.
Is Matt Stafford the other?
Matt Stafford is not. No.
No, Matt Stafford's
I know the answer, don't I?
Go on.
It's Ryan Fitzpatrick, isn't it?
He hasn't played every game, has he?
Yeah.
Oh, is it? No, it's not him. It's not even him. Actually, it might be him. I might have looked over and
Let's be cut.
But Nick Foles has also passed for less yards than Cam Newton.
Did Nick Foles play on the weekend?
He didn't play at the weekend.
Oh, well, there you go. All right. Well, it's just one, and it's my quarterback.
No.
This is the sort of insight you're going to be getting on a weekly basis.
Hey, the stats remain the same. 2 quarterbacks apart from less yards than Cam Newton. But I find that really, really surprising, and I just think it goes to show that you don't need this quarterback who's going to throw for 300 yards every week. As long as you've got a running game that keeps pounding, if you've got a defence that swarms the ball, and you've got a quarterback who you don't know what he's going to do. He can throw as good as anyone, and he can run as good as anyone. It's tough to bring down, So surely he has to be sort of in talk for MVP of the year.
He's definitely an MVP candidate. My fear with Cam Newton is that at some point you never think he's far away from an injury, even though he's huge and he's seemingly indestructible. They put him in. They're on the verge of Robert Griffin in him at times, where they put him in so many dangerous positions that you think he's one bad hit and there's so much at stake. Because if Cam Newton goes down, that team's done really. Like there's the backup. I don't even know who the backup is, but I assume it's no one of his level. And he is the driving force behind that team. They played Green Bay recently, and they've got a good defense. Luke Kuechly's awesome, and is it Josh Norman, the cornerback, who a lot of people are talking about this year? They're a good, decent all-round team, but I think I can't remember who made this point, one of the NFL analysts, but they've got six or seven really good players, and they make the most of them. Like they've got a lot of average players, but their star players turn up, and that seems to be what they've done this season. Like Kuechly on defense, Cam Newton. I really like the rookie wide receiver, is it Funchess, who's stepped up last few weeks. Kelvin Benjamin, who did so much last year, he's injured. He's not even featured at all this season. But people like Greg Olsen just keep ticking over, and I don't realistically think they're a Super Bowl contender. But as long as they've got...
So you say that they've got six good players, and they make do with that. Now that's 4 more good players than the Patriots have got.
But the Patriots have got one, maybe the best player in the league, in Brady.
That's a bit harsh. Danny Amendola's a good player. If you're just including Gronkowski and Brady, which I presume you are, then Amendola's a good player. Edelman's a good player.
Well, do you think that you could take them out of that Patriots side and they'd be any good in any other team?
Well, yeah.
I think Amendola would improve the Panthers.
Yeah, potentially, but it's still. I think that it's a bit of a disservice to the Panthers to say that they've only got 6 good players.
It's credit to the Panthers because no one expected them to be this good.
Ron Rivera's a very good coach as well. He also looks like a 1970s cop, but he is also a very good coach.
Well, that makes him an even better coach.
Yeah.
And he seems like a nice guy as well, Ron Rivera. He was on the BBC's surprisingly good Road to Super Bowl 50 program last week and came across really well. I think fair play. I just don't think this is sustainable for the Panthers. They beat up on a bad team at the weekend, and they've got a chance as long as Newton's fit. But if they're 1 or 2 in the NFC, I could just see them going out in the first round of the playoffs or the first game they play in the playoffs.
You say if they're going to be 1 or 2 in the NFC. Let's look at the games they've got left. They've got 6 games left. They're at Dallas Cowboys. They're at New Orleans Saints. Against Atlanta. At New York Jets. At Atlanta Falcons. And against Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I mean, there's not too many defeats there, is there?
You'd say they'd win at least 3 of those, and if they go 13-3, then they're a pretty decent shout to be top seed in the NFC. They're clearly a very good team, but are they good enough to trouble one of the really good AFC sides when it comes to it?
I think so. I mean, they've beaten the Green Bay Packers, they've beaten the Seattle Seahawks, and those are 2 good teams that they've beaten. Now you can say what you like about Green Bay Packers being, out of form, but they still went there and beat them.
To be fair, they put up a huge lead on the Packers, but when it came down, there was a wobble in the second half. They showed some fragility in the second half of that game, and the Packers, in the end, they were one player away from, one score away from leveling it in the final seconds. So, if you put pressure on, like we were saying about the Vikings earlier, the Panthers have taken the lead in a lot of games this year and then defended well. But I think, it's a young team and a lot of players who've not really experienced, the latter stages of the playoffs, and it'll be interesting to see how they cope with the pressure of that side of it.
Brilliant. Right. So the last thing I want to talk about in terms of that game is in the post-match presser. I don't know if you've seen the picture of Cam Newton's attire.
His shoes. He's got gold shoes, hasn't he?
But it wasn't the shoes that I saw this time. It was he had what can only be described as a furry tail hanging from the side of his waist.
Okay, I've not seen that. A furry tail?
Furry tail. As some sort of fashion accessory, with no sense of irony whatsoever.
And he wasn't questioned about this? No, seriously. If you've got a dead animal hanging from the side of you should be questioned, surely.
I don't think he would have been questioned, But I want to add one last thing about Cam Newton, which just sort of makes him seem a bit unlikable to me. I don't know if it was last season or the season before when he was injured, and he ran into the huddle when he wasn't even playing and had a penalty called against him. And the way he celebrates on the sideline when he's not playing, and it makes it all about him. And I want to like him, I really do, but there's something about him that's just unlikable. What do you think?
Well, I don't know. Has anyone else found themselves in a position this week of looking up YouTube videos of how to do the dab? Because I was in that position yesterday, which is Cam Newton's signature dance, which is apparently annoying white America, if you believe NFL.com. I watched the YouTube video by Rich the Kid, who is an annoyingly young New York rapper. But maybe it's something we can incorporate into next week's podcast if we can all learn it in the next 7 days.
Can you give a step-by-step instruction now, Ian?
We are all naked from the waist down, so this is.
You don't need to see anything other than the arm, which goes across. The way it was described by Rich the Kid is pretend you're sneezing into your arm while. Yeah, you've done it. That's it.
That's not a dance move.
That's called a dab. That's dabbing.
Is it supposed to be a dance move?
Yeah, you do it to the beat.
Oh, there's no beat.
Then you throw your other arm out to the side.
All right, okay.
What beat is this? They're playing football. What kind of beat is there going on?
The beat down on Washington Redskins.
Oh, there you go.
Must be done.
I see what you did there.
But I thought, it was a really good performance from Carolina. It was 14-all, and then I think Washington Redskins had a good chance to go 21-14 up, and there was a controversial call made against them, and directly from that, Carolina went 21-14 up, and from there on, the game was won. But it just would have been nice to see what would have happened to Carolina if Washington Redskins had that sort of touchdown given to them, and seen where that game could have gone from there. Like Ian said, they haven't really been properly challenged yet, and it'd be nice to see what happens when they are. But maybe they're just that good that they won't be. Okay. All right.
That silence was a hint.
I enjoyed that. That was good.
All right. We're moving on. So we're going to keep on with Washington. So it's the name that we're going to concentrate on now. Washington Redskins, which I think we can all agree we're not fans of. I'm not sure who decided that was going to be a good name at any point in history, but it is their name and they've gone along with it, and for tradition's sake they don't really want to get rid of it.
How did that meeting go? Oh, we'll call ourselves a Redskins. Nice one, definitely. We'll go with that. We won't do, cheaters or... Actually, cheaters is an awful example. My head. Okay, Panthers.
New England seems good, Mark.
Panthers, Tigers. No, we'll go with Redskins. We'll offend a group of people. Let's do that. And yeah, we'll do that. But anyway, sorry, carry on.
Does anyone watch the John Oliver Last Week Tonight programme?
No idea what you're on about.
Right,
No, I've seen bits of it, but not all of it.
Yeah, he did a good piece on the Washington Redskins and the name and how they won't change their name. And their defence was that there are companies with worse names in America than them. At no point did they say that their name is fine. It was more people got worse names than us. It was a very well done piece, but I think I can have you all on board that we don't want to refer to them as the Washington Redskins anymore. If we can come up with a better name for them than that, then they shall forever be referred to as that on the podcast from now on. So I don't know if anyone else has any good ideas for a new name for Washington.
Have we all seen the Vine of Kirk Cousins screaming at reporters from a few weeks ago, where he walks through the mix zone at Washington Stadium and just shouts, "You like that? You like that?" after a win. So maybe we can call them the Washington You Like That's.
That's quite a good one. I like that. I do like that.
Oh, there we go.
Dan, you can splice in the audio of that at the end of this.
Oh, we'll do.
Another name I thought I'd have is, despite the fact they're not actually based in Washington DC, and they shouldn't as such be called the Washington Redskins for a start off, is something related to the fact that the president resides in their locale. So I was thinking that they could have a changeable name. Every time a new president comes in, they can be referred to as their name. So we could have the Washington Obamas, and should Hillary Clinton win, it'll be the Washington Hillarys. And then let's say Donald Trump wins the next election. I think we'll all be happy with their name then.
Or what about naming them after the fictional president from the wonderful House of Cards, the Washington Underwoods?
Washington Underwoods. Yeah,
that gets my vote.
The Washington Underwoods. Okay, so I was gonna put aside to Dan actually and say that you can have the deciding vote on what they're going to be called. So they'll forever not be known as the Washington Underwoods now.
Nice. I'm happy with that.
Alright, Dan, you can get to work on their new logo. At the moment, they have a picture of a Native American, a profile of a Native American. So something similar to that, please. With or without.
Could I not just do Frank Underwood with the headdress on, just the same way? That work?
I think that comes under appropriation.
I was going to say Rory or Tony Underwood, but the Frank Underwood's fine. That's fine.
Rory Underwood would be, yeah, I might do that as well.
Alright, sorry, there's something going on my side here. I'm starting to get a feeling, and when I get that feeling, Rexual healing.
Right. Basically, this is something that I wanted to do, and it was part of the condition of me joining this, was every week I could talk about Rex Ryan for a couple of minutes. Mainly because he's an incredible character. Anyone who gives what we'd call a bollocking to his team and then ends it with, let's go get a goddamn snack, is someone who needs to be taken aware of. This is a man who, despite being apoplectic with rage, at the back of his mind was still thinking about food. Now, anyone like that deserves some time. Now, this is a great week to start because Rex, head coach of the Buffalo Bills, was up against Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, and the New England Patriots. Now, they have always had a rivalry. I'm laughing because this is funny, but Rex Ryan, as soon as he became the New York Jets head coach, the first thing he said when he played them was he's not going to go kissing their rings. So he hasn't been kissing any rings since, even though his record against them has been appalling. Now, they lost again at the week. Actually, it was last night, it was 2013. But the main talking point usually would be about something that Rex says, but today it's something slightly different. Although it does revolve around the great man, and the fact that one of Tom Brady's calls was Rex Ryan. Now, for Rex himself, this was obviously his cup final. For him, no greater thrill than that. So in the post game, when he was asked, he said, "He likes me. I know that." Now, I haven't seen him say that, but I know exactly what his face would have been like, and I know he would have been beaming from ear to ear. Before the game, he said, "Of course they want to bury me," Rex Ryan said. "No question they want to beat me." Now, that's typical Rex, where he kind of puts everything on him. Now, a lot of the time it works quite well, and the players like him because he takes a flak for when they lose, etc., etc. But there's nothing particularly modest about saying, "Of course they want to bury me," when he actually represents a team, not himself. He'll get that one day, but maybe not anytime soon. Which was also quite interesting was Ray Lewis, who used to play for the Baltimore Ravens, one of the most respected linebackers of all the time, said before, I think it was before the game actually, that he says, if he had a choice of who would coach him, he said, "I'm not choosing nobody else but Rex Ryan. If you're asking me Bill Belichick or Rex Ryan, I'm taking Rex Ryan all day because Rex relates to players as well as myself, more like a father." Now, so Ray Lewis would rather not win than win, it seems like. But I thought that was quite interesting. During the game, Rex was his usual heated self, although disappointingly, he only got one 15-yard penalty given against him for giving mouth to the officials, and he only threw his headset off once. So that was disappointing, but next week we hope to have more of, when you get that feeling, you get some Rex, you're healing. You're on mute, Sean.
Sorry. Is Rob the same as him?
Apparently, yes.
Okay.
Just with more hair and more of a belly.
He doesn't get the opportunity.
Rob Ryan, there is nothing more beautiful when Rob Ryan actually puts his fingers through his hair when he's stressing. He does that a lot. But Rex has also said that he'd like him to work with him one day, so that could be.
Well, he's got a similar sense of self-worth, hasn't he, Rob Ryan? Because when he was sacked by the Saints recently, he said he wouldn't be out of work for longer than 5 minutes. I'm not sure if he's got another job yet. Oh, is it the Cowboys? He made a similar comment after
No,
he
he's split off the both.
Why is he not with the Bills right now?
It's only because Rex being Rex, he's so loyal. He will take his defensive coordinator with him wherever he goes, and unless he goes, he just won't.
This is a reference that I don't think, Dan, you'll maybe appreciate this, but for those unfamiliar with the Ryan brothers, they're basically the brothers in Arrested Development, which is played by the same actor, but in one scene one wears a beard, and in the other scene one doesn't wear a beard. Help paint a picture at all.
All right, so we're going to move on to the last game we're going to look at this week, and that is the Jets-Texans game. So, awful performance again from the Jets. So
strong. It wasn't awful. T.Y. Yates is possibly one of the. No, he was awful. He was awful. The Jets were awful. It was just not a pretty game to watch. It looked like it was going to be a game of defences which you could kind of handle and kind of understand, because the Texans are very, very good defensive. Of course, they've got J.J. Watt, but they've also got Brian Cushing, who's obviously one of the best linebackers in the game. But what the Jets decided to do was leave Bruno Giacomini one-on-one with J.J. Watt. No one ever leaves anyone one-on-one with J.J. Watt. And you'd think after a series that, they change that up, maybe get 2-on-1. It took them a half. It took them a half to realise they needed 2 people on J.J. Watt. And they brought Shaw Ferguson over. But what didn't help was the fact that Fitzpatrick had a game that he didn't really connect with anyone. The first half, Decker didn't get a catch in the first half. Eric Decker didn't get a catch in the first half. Brandon Marshall was fairly anonymous, although he does get a couple double teams a lot. And Chris Ivory continues.
To Chris Ivory?
He's picked up a few injuries. He's lost his burst of speed. The one thing about Chris Ivory is a downhill runner.
Yeah.
And his yak, which is basically yards after contact,
Yeah.
is usually really good. But the last few weeks, because of injuries, he's just really struggled.
And a lot of what they do on offense just depends on him. I mean, if Brian Marshall has an off day, Chris Ivory has to have a good day, right?
Pretty much. Although Decker's had a good season, but you pretty much hit the nail on the head there. But defensively, the Jets have been absolutely. The Jets, I think they're starting to believe they're on high. But a lot of people saying they're the best defense in football, when in reality they're not. They're nowhere near. They've got in the Royal Reeves and Antonio Cromartie. You'd think they've got one of the best pairings of cornerbacks in the league. Cromartie has had a.
Flaky.
Hmm?
Cromartie's flaky. I mean, you can't rely on him season after season. You know, he has off years all the time.
He does, and he looks to have lost a bit of speed. Darrell Reeves has lost a bit of speed. Although Reeves, not so much of an issue because he's such a clever footballer. He gets the extra yard in his head.
But when he comes up against someone like DeAndre Hopkins, you know, he's...
Yeah. There's one thing coming up against DeAndre Hopkins. There's another coming up against DeAndre Hopkins when you're a team that blitzes from safety constantly, so you've got no help. And Reeves, like I said, he's lost the yard of page, but he's no slouch. But up against DeAndre Hopkins, he's got no chance.
Did you see the comments after the game from DeAndre Hopkins where he was questioned by reporters, and he said he made a Reeves Island comment and did it in sort of finger speech marks, which is a sort of a nice changing of the guard moment from one of the best cornerbacks in the last 10 years or so, sort of maybe slightly slowing down, and one of the best up and coming receivers, taking his place in the pecking order now.
Well, at least you're not paying him a lot of money.
Yeah, 70 million for those corners. But Reeves Island is becoming a very lonely place at the minute. Yeah, to say.
Well, he seems to get some company there.
It's breaking news as we record this. Josh McCown has been named a Browns starter.
Oh, Johnny.
Oh, Johnny football. He was given a start for the season and he's gone and blown it.
After less than 14 days later, he's no longer. He was given an open ticket to the end of the season, and he's come off the rails.
I know it's not good radio, but minute silence, anyone? So yeah, just quickly, last thing on this game I want to talk about, and last thing on Jets in general, the quarterback situation. What happens from here on in? Is there any point playing Geno Smith for the rest of the season? And
I don't think there's any point in Geno Smith ever playing again. Really, no, seriously. Fitzpatrick hasn't been awful. Ryan Fitzpatrick's role is a very depressing one. Is not to lose games. I know it sounds awful, but it's the truth. And so far, he hasn't really. He wasn't when it mattered and we were chasing game. When the Jets were chasing the game, he threw 2 interceptions, which isn't good. But if you think about it, if Geno Smith was in that situation, he would have done the same. He's awful in the red zone. He's awful under pressure. When he played earlier this season, when time was against him, instead of throwing the ball away, he took a sack, which lost valuable yards and seconds. Geno Smith is certainly not the answer. Ryan Fitzpatrick is a decent fill for this season, and when the Jets get Drew Brees in the off-season on trade, it'll be fine because the Jets will then win the Super Bowl next season.
Is that likely to happen? Is that a strong rumour going around?
It's a wish.
He's got to do something.
Brees leaving the Saints is not completely out of the question.
No, but I think you'll face some stiff competition there. But if you get Brees in, you're going to be a decent side again.
We might even win. In the season with a winning record. You never know.
I mean, it's pretty sad, really, because you were looking pretty good a few weeks ago, and now he's just a few defeats in a row to some not very good teams. And
that's the thing. We beat the Colts quite easily this season, but struggling. But apart from that, we struggled. We played well against the Patriots. Quite unlucky to win that. Not to win that, rather. But lucky to beat Jacksonville, lost to the Raiders, and so that's not great. But yeah.
Right, so last thing I want to talk about on this podcast is what games. We're going to look at 3 games next week. So we're going to choose them now. So if I read through the list of games, and then Ian, you can decide one, Diddley, you can decide one, and Dan, you can decide the last. Right, so we've got Eagles at Lions, Panthers at Cowboys, Bears at Packers, Bills at Chiefs, Rams at Bengals, Saints at Texans, Bucks at Dolphins, Chargers at Jags, Vikings at Falcons, Giants at Underwoods, Raiders at Titans, Cards at Niners, Steelers at Seahawks, Pats at Broncos, and the I can't read my own handwriting. Ravens at Browns.
Fair to say it's not a stellar week of games.
It's not really.
I was just thinking that.
Steelers Seahawks seems an interesting one. Seahawks. Everyone seems to, just, despite having lost 4 or 5 games, everyone seems to assume they'll still make the playoffs. This will be a big test of that. Panthers Cowboys similarly. I mean, we spoke a lot about the Panthers earlier, but I wouldn't, who could rule out them going and losing in Dallas this week and for their first defeat of the season. So that's one I'll be following on Thursday for Thanksgiving.
So you're going Panthers Cowboys, Ian?
Yeah.
Diddley?
Yeah, the only game that really stood out for me there was the Steelers one. The rest seemed pretty dull, if we're going to be honest. It'd be interesting to see how the Ravens get on with Matt Shaw at quarterback and no Forsett. So the Ravens season's done anyway. Let's be honest, they're 3-7, and they ain't going to improve with Matt Shaw. But that'll be interesting to see how they get on. But yes, Steelers. Who are the Steelers playing again?
Seahawks.
Yeah, I think that's the standout fixture, isn't it?
So, Dan, what are you saying?
I think we should go for the Underwoods. Follow our team.
Let's have a look at the Underwoods. Yeah, I like it, Dan.
Yep. So that were the Texans. Ian stole the Cowboys, so that was me out pretty much.
Okay.
So Dan, are your affections up for grabs in NFL terms? Are you waiting to be convinced by a team, or are you Cowboys till you die?
I would say no. I'm pretty open. I think there's the Cowboys. It was the technology aspect I liked, as we remember. They had a really expensive stadium. Yeah, exactly. That's how these guys sold it to me the first time around. So, but I am open to. I've got the games on record, so I will have to watch them at some point. It's the highlights show, which I think Ian told me about, so that will help me catch up. But then I'm obviously going to be a week behind because you've just all talked about the games and then it'll put it in some reference to me. But
Dan, I have a tremendous idea. How about we put it out to the world of Twitter, and people can tell us who you should support and why. Dan, what do you say to that?
I like that idea. You've told me who I should support in most games since I've known you guys, so let's put it out a bit wider and see what other people think.
And Dan will get a tattoo of this team before next week's show.
Unless it's the Underwoods. Unless I can get a massive Frank Underwood on my back. If I can get that, then yeah, sounds good.
Then yes. What's that?
I'm not agreeing to it, but I'm not ruling it out.
Just a quick word on the Bucks-Colts game. I think Andrew Luck is still out injured.
And that injury, a lacerated kidney, is it?
Yeah. Matt Hasselbeck is behind a porous offensive line. And so...
Does the word lacerated kidney not make anyone just wince? How painful does that sound?
How does that happen? How did he lacerate his kidney?
Oh, don't ask that. I don't have the answer.
It sounds like it's an internal thing. I mean, that's not going to be an easy injury to sustain. That's got to be...
I'll be honest, I was too scared to read. As soon as I heard he had danger, I'm no interest to find out how that happened. It's enough. All I know, that's enough.
So if Matt Hasselbeck goes down, the third string Colts quarterback is the one and only Clipball Jesus. So I think we can all hope for a Matt Hasselbeck injury this weekend, can't we?
Clipboard, what, Kurt Warner?
Clipball Jesus. Charlie Whitehurst.
Charlie Whitehurst.
Oh, okay.
I'm disappointed it wasn't the guy who played that season before Luck. Who was that guy? Curtis Painter.
Oh,
I'd like to see Curtis Painter back in the league, who led them to a glorious 1-15 season, which ultimately got them Andrew Luck, so he did his job. But
he strikes me as a man who owns a car dealership now.
He strikes me as a man who's got a ranch and who rides a horse around that ranch based on probably the millions he earned in the NFL. But another game to look out for this week, I think Rams Bengals is one that should be interesting because the Bengals, much like the Panthers, had a great start to the season. Ultimately, they're still the Bengals, and Dalton is not.
He's gearing himself up for the playoffs, isn't he?
I'm not a fan of Dalton. I don't think he'll ever be someone who wins more than a handful of playoff games in his career. But the Bengals, have the Bengals got enough players around him to sort of, make up for the fact their quarterback is a 6 out of 10, 6.5 out of 10 quarterback. The Rams are a weird team. They should be a hell of a lot better than they are, given the draft picks they've had in recent years. But they've still got a lot of good players, and that could be an upset.
I mean, they're good on defense, but shipping 37 points, was it, to Chicago Bears? Not the last game, the game before. It doesn't strike me as a decent defense. And on offense, you just got to look at the quarterback. If it's not Nick Foles, it's Case Keenum, and that's a real issue for him.
I concussed Case Keenum as well.
Oh, is it really, Uncle?
No, but they'll just play him again.
Yeah, they played him with a concussion last week, so why not do it again? It's quite a hard phrase to say, a concussed Case Keenum, so maybe that could be, I don't know what that is. But we'll cut that bit out, Dan. But Jeff Fisher, the Rams coach, there's a lot of talk about coaches who are sort of dead man walking. It feels like there should be more pressure on Jeff Fisher because he's come in, had a lot of draft picks, and just overseen continual mediocrity, despite having a lot of not just first round picks, but a lot of high first round picks.
Do you think he's sort of saved by the bad quarterbacks he's had at his disposal?
But why has he had so many bad quarterbacks? I mean, obviously the
Foles isn't bad. Nick Foles is average. He's not bad. Bradford was bad.
Bradford was injured a lot, but they should have been able to. I mean, is it the scouting? I know a quarterback is really important, but we've just spoke about some teams who haven't got great quarterbacks and still get by. I mean, could they not have traded for Kirk Cousins or someone like that, just someone manageable? If
you've got as good a runner as you've got in Todd Gurley, you might not have had as great a last few weeks as he had in his first few, but that you should go some way sort of covering for your quarterback, but they don't seem to be able to do that at all. So that's it. That's it for this week's podcast. So we'll be signing off until next week, where we'll be watching the Panthers Cowboys, Giants Underwoods, and Steelers Seahawks.
How can people follow us if they want to find out more?
Your social media, Ian.
We've got a Facebook page with 0 followers at the moment. Not even we like it. We've got more admins than followers. And we've got a Twitter account, and we've got a SoundCloud page, and what else have we got, Dan? We've got a YouTube channel.
SoundCloud, Google Plus.
We've got
all those Google Pluses out there.
We're on Google Plus, people. Don't worry. But basically, go to soundcloud.com/characterissuesNFL, and that's where you can find out all the details about how to follow us.
All right, that's perfect. Thanks, guys. See you next week.
Bye.